can you talk about the human aspect to the story, which is really fascinating and really well done?
Well, I mean, one of the things I really wanted to explore, the crazy thing for me about Rise was I had never, being a lifelong Apes fan, I had never experienced, forget about even just an Apes franchise movie, but I'd never experienced that level of emotional identification with a character that was not human in a movie. I felt like what Weta and Andy were able to do was astonishing. And the thing that I was really interested in this movie was carrying that emotionality forward. And I thought, if you created an ape civilization and you knew that the humans had been sort of really put through what was an apocalypse and they were a family that was trying to heal themselves, that this would be a moment in time where it could have been Planet of the Humans and Apes. And something happened where that didn't happen. We know what happens, it becomes Planet of the Apes. And I thought, well, if we do that, then we'll be exploring an anatomy of violence, an anatomy of the things that could have worked, the parts that were fighting for it to work, and then the parts that couldn't resist violence, and where does that come from? And that's all about character. And so I was looking for the human aspects in the humans and the human aspects in the apes, because the cool thing about Planet of the Apes to me is that the kind of conceit is, oh look, the animals have taken over the planet, but the secret is, of course, we're the animals. I mean, we are animals. And so it means that Planet of the Apes is actually an exploration of who we are and the struggle within us between our sort of higher selves and our more animalistic sides, our kind of darker nature, the sort of pull toward violence and impulsiveness. And I wanted that to be the struggle on both sides, and I wanted there to be no villains. I wanted the movie to be filled with empathy so that you could look at the human characters and feel like you understood, after everything they'd been through, why they would be afraid of the apes and why they might have that kind of point of view. And you would feel the same way about the apes. You'd understand after what they'd been through. When you think of Koba and the way he was essentially, he went through a kind of ape holocaust. He was a prisoner, he was experimented on, and of course he would mistrust humans. And so that's a very dangerous situation to be in. The history between those two populations is not a good one. So how do you find a way to make it through that treacherous time? And that, I felt, would be a test to Andy's leadership as Caesar. That the idea was that in Rise you had a revolutionary, but here you have a leader, and a leader in difficult times. And this is how mythic characters are created. They get tested in this way. And so those were all the kind of themes we were looking for in the movie, both human and ape. And one of the big revelations, I think, for the apes and for Andy's character, for Caesar in the story, is the revelation of just how human the apes are. You know, it's kind of a through the looking glass kind of sci-fi idea, which was, wow, we always, you know, come to this revelation about the animal in us. And for the apes, it's about coming to the revelation of the human in them, and that meaning that the ways in which they have the vulnerabilities, the kind of failings that the humans seem to have that almost destroyed themselves in the viral apocalypse. And the apes wanted to believe that they could have a better society, but actually they're going to have the same struggles that the humans had, and that's the story that sort of is going to be unfolding for them.
Does that help you kind of carry on to the next one? Do you already
It does.
know?
That's exactly the idea. I mean, the idea is that you know, for me, what was exciting when I first got involved, there was a kind of post-apocalyptic human story, and the apes kind of came down and joined them in the city, and it was the story, and actually the apes were much more articulate than they are in this movie. And I said to them, I said, guys, you can't skip all of the great stuff. Like Rise, there's so much delicious stuff of Andy as he's sort of learning sort of how to express himself. When he first speaks for the first time, it's breathtaking. I said, you can't skip that. And if you're going to do that, then you're going to do like the anatomy of this ape world. You're going to do an ape world creation movie instead of a post-apocalyptic human story, which is part of the story, but it's not the center of it the way it is in so many. There are a lot of post-apocalyptic human stories. We've seen it a lot. But I don't think you've seen this story, this ape sort of burgeoning civilization movie. And that means really doing an ape point of view movie, which I don't think has ever quite been done to this extent. And it means creating relationships and characters that are going to be, we're going to follow way into the future. I mean, this is a family story on the ape side and the human story, and that means that it's a generational story. Caesar has children. How does this get from this world to the world of the '68 Planet of the Apes? That's a long mythic journey, and I'm kind of excited about telling those stories.